an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Jesse Berger. I'm the chairman of Harnett County's Republican Party. With us today, we have Judge Michael Stading. Very excited to have you with us, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody, especially the folks of Harnett County.
Yeah, Jesse, and thank you first off for doing this. I want to give you my expression of gratitude for actually doing this, so people can get to know the judicial candidates or the other candidates. Because without this, sometimes it's hard to find us because we don't have the campaigns or the network that maybe somebody running for governor or senate has. But it's the same election geographically. So as we try to get to every event on Tuesday and Thursday and Sunday, there's one of us. And so I really appreciate this opportunity to do this. I've been dying to get back to Harnett County to see y'all. I used to live there back when I was in law school for a short period of time. But so I'm from Mint Hill, North Carolina. It's you can think of it as a suburb of Charlotte, but it is distinct from Charlotte culturally. It has a small town, not quite a Mayberry feel, but it's a lot smaller. And a lot more conservative than the city of Charlotte is on the whole. There's some red precincts over here. I live in one of them. But I met my wife over here in high school in the same town when I was 17, and we continued to date, and we got married my second year in law school. She went to Meredith, I went to UNC Chapel Hill, and we continued to date. And after I got my law degree, we moved back here, and we have 3 kids now at this point in time. And she actually gave up her career to homeschool them. But professionally, I started out in civil law for 1 year, and it was kind of a desk job, and that's not in my blood. So I had to be in the courtroom. So I went to the prosecutor's office, took a pay cut, and did that for about 6 years in Mecklenburg County. Did about everything up and down the chain you can do, from traffic tickets up to stuff involving deaths, some pretty serious crimes for folks that got a lot of time for the things they did because of their record. As we like to progress in our career, I decided to try the other side of the Constitution and try the other side of the courtroom. So I went over to do defense work for 6.5 years. So pretty balanced there. And I mean, when you're a prosecutor, it's almost a natural transition because you've done all the trials, you've done all the jury trials, the judges, the courtroom decorum, what you're doing. It's the same law. It's just arguing the other side of it. But what I learned most out of that job was how to run a business, because it was eat what you kill. And I learned a lot. And honestly, we did very well with that. And it was me and my mother. She helped out doing the phones, doing the calendaring, the stuff that's not fun at all, but she was very good at it, and the collection, because that's such an important part of the business. And but also as part of that, what I really enjoyed doing is I got to represent the Fraternal Order of Police. They were nice enough or thought enough of me to put them on their list. And so when an officer has to use force, or let's say a suspect has a gun and they have to discharge theirs or something like that happens, and then there's an investigation afterwards to make sure they did what they were supposed to do. And they're treated like a prosecution. And so at that point in time, they have legal rights, obviously, and then they have attorneys they can call. And so I used to do that at a reduced rate. They would call me usually 3 a.m. if you're lucky. And then you get out of bed and you go over there, and you could be at that place for 24 hours with the officer, because there's a major process involved with that. But I really enjoyed it. It gave me kind of a different perspective. That other side of the courtroom, most attorneys don't get to see what law enforcement goes through. So I got to see prosecutor, defense, and then law enforcement. And like I said, I had civil stuff I'd done as well. And then in 2016, I joined the JAG Corps. I direct commissioned as a reservist. I was 35. That was the oldest you could be to join the service at the time. And 3 kids at home. My wife allowed me to go off to commissioned officer training school and JAG school. And then now I go to Shaw Air Force Base. What ends up being about 31, 32 days out of the year. Usually it involves court martials, discharge boards, or legal service to veterans and active duty guys and gals. So that then taught me the federal system and the military system. And then in 2018, I ran for judge. And I'll tell you, I was not politically involved before that. our congressman, who at the time was our state senator, his name is Dan Bishop. He's someone who got me involved in politics, and he's a very conservative individual, and we clicked very well. And at that point in time, I got involved and ran the district court election. I didn't have a primary, so it was just a general, and we beat a Democrat in a blue county, and it was a miracle. And ever since then, I've done exactly what I've told the voters I would do, and that's uphold the Constitution, make sure those First Amendment rights are protected, Second Amendment rights. I mean, we do deal with those. I mean, you have people who protest at the abortion clinic. You have people who have their gun permit get denied, and then they appeal it to a district court judge. And then we deal with criminals, and not everybody's guilty, and not every nail needs a hammer, but there are some violent career criminals, and you gotta have judges who hold them accountable, who they got to be able to recognize and have the knowledge and the background. Hey, this person can hurt someone in the community, so we got to keep them in custody, and that's just following the statute and the Constitution. It's not, it's common sense, but some people lose that along the way. So then I got that other perspective, which was behind the bench. So I feel like I got this panoramic view of the courtroom now. So I'm very happy with hopefully what that would offer the voters in North Carolina.
Awesome. Well, as we're talking about that viewpoint and all the different areas of things that you've done, could you expand a little bit into the actual system, the actual court system, and kind of discuss how it works in the state of North Carolina?
Yeah, and like we were talking about earlier, I'm just going to start, from the ground and go up. And so I usually speak of the court system as like a 4-tier cake or like a 4-story building, but I'm gonna add a little something else in there too, because you brought it up. And usually I don't do this because, when we speak at these events, we're timed. And so I don't go into everything, but let's start with the magistrates. So they're hired by the chief district court judge out of district court. And they're going to do things like determine probable cause on crime. So if the police officer arrests somebody, they usually take them before a magistrate, and then the magistrate determines whether or not there's probable cause, and then you go from there, and they'll set conditions of release depending upon the circumstances. Sometimes that'll go in front of a district court judge, but usually it starts with a magistrate. I mean, they do a lot of other things too. Magistrates can conduct weddings, but judges can't. I don't know why the statute's set up that way, but it is. They do small claims court, so the smaller civil suits, they'll handle that stuff. And then let's hop up. We're still in the same story of the courthouse, but maybe a different room, maybe a little higher room, district court, and that's where I'm a judge right now. And so you're dealing with, if someone's going to district courthouse, your county courthouse, they're probably going in a district courtroom. It's your workhorse of the courthouse. It's those misdemeanor criminals, first appearance felony bonds. That's pretty important, I think. Civil cases, not as expensive as those ones in Superior Court, but there's civil cases there, and some of those turn into jury trials. I've done jury trials like they do in Superior Court with car wrecks. Juvenile cases, and I'm in domestic violence court a lot. There's a civil component to that for protective orders, and then there's the criminal side of that as well. But I used to be the lead judge for that up until, I don't know, about a month ago, and then I just decided I had too much going on and wanted to devote my attention where it needed to be, and not take away from other stuff, and allow that to be handled appropriately. And then we have like specialized courts, and I do one of those too, like treatment courts. So there'll be a DWI court in some counties, or a drug court, and it's not the typical hammer court. It's more of a, let's say, a happier place to be. It's more of something where we're trying to get people to graduate to a certain level, and it's like structured rehabilitation for them. And actually really enjoy doing that, because I see the progress out of individuals. I mean, it doesn't always happen, but the success rate is pretty darn good. So that's district court. And then if you go up the next floor of the building there, you go to Superior Court, and you're still in the county courthouse. And there's going to be less of those judges than there are district court judges. Their elections are longer terms. Their districts may be different, and they're going to handle felonies. And those can at times be bench trials with a judge if the person waives their rights on a misdemeanor appeal or something like that. But generally, it's going to be a jury trial, and that's going to be real serious stuff. That's just your courtroom drama TV stuff. And then you're going to have the higher dollar civil cases. So that's your county courthouse. Now you're going to get on, depending upon where you live, but you're going to drive down the road and go to Raleigh from there. So these are your policy level courts. And so Court of Appeals, and Supreme Court. I'm actually going to jump up to the top there because I want to focus on Court of Appeals for a second. So up at the very top, the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Well, not really the highest court in the land, but the highest state court is the way I'll say that, because we have our federal system as well. And, that's the last word for the most part. And they're going to be looking at those state constitutional issues. They're going to be the final appellate court. So things that are appealed out of that courthouse from the county that go to the Court of Appeals, and then they're appealed again, and then they go up to the Supreme Court. About 10 to 20% of appealed cases end at the Supreme Court. Most of them are actually handled at the Court of Appeals. But again, it is the last word. So it's an important court for us. There's 7 justices there. So, we elect those like we talked about. They have 8-year terms. The makeup right now is 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans. And so you see people kind of lining up on different sides of the aisle in these cases. And I think that's been evident lately. I'm not speaking to the merits of that, but it's kind of obvious that you see people lining up on one side or the other with the decisions, and everybody's kind of usually on the same team there. And they sit as a body, so they rule by majority. So if there's 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans, then usually that's the side that's going to win. There are 2 seats up for this on this ballot coming up here in November that could potentially flip that to where we have 2 additional Republicans. That will obviously change the balance of power in the court. Okay, so go back down to the 3rd floor there. The Court of Appeals. There are 15 judges and also have 8-year terms, but they're kind of staggered. They never sit as a body. They sit in panels of 3. And even last week, okay, so the makeup of that court is 10 Republicans and 5 Democrats. But because the way the panels are set up, there's no guarantees on how that's going to work out. Just last week, there was a case decided. Again, I'm not speaking to the merits of it, but there was 2 Democrats and 1 Republican on the panel, despite the makeup of the court. And, that's likely because of judicial philosophy, the way people see the world, how they believe things should be, how they interpret the law. That makes the decision there. So each and every one of those seats is important. And if the cases get there is, they're appealed out of the trial courts. So they would leave the county courthouse, and then their first stop there would be at the Court of Appeals. And the reason I say the Court of Appeals is important is because 80 to 90% of those constitutional issues, those appealed cases, are resolved there. Sorry.
No, that was great. I appreciate that. That was a very, very thorough and in-depth answer, and I very much appreciate it. During your answer, you mentioned about judicial philosophy, and I was hoping you could expand upon what is your judicial philosophy and how that ties into your judicial discretion.
Yeah, it's incredibly influential, and most conservatives will probably give a pretty similar answer. There's little deviations in it, and I'll tell you my exact one. I had an event the other night, and there was a homeschool student. This kid was brilliant. And he was asking me questions about original intent versus original meaning and just getting into the weeds on it. I was impressed because I don't even think he was out of high school. Very smart kid. But so I follow Antonin Scalia. I consider him to be the father of conservative judicial philosophy, and I really admire his opinions and how he structured things and how he's laid out kind of a grounded philosophy. Because if you have a judge that's just kind of deciding what they think, I think that's a real issue, because everyone else that gets out there and helps out with the party stuff, works for the elections, we're trying to get these representatives in office in the House of Representatives and the Senate, because ultimately, in Article 1 of the Constitution, we have them in there to represent us, and that's why we vote them in there. And if they don't do a good job, there's a remedy for that. We vote them out. And so those are our representatives. Those are for we the people. So they make those laws, and to overturn them is a pretty darn high burden. So to have a single individual, a judge, step in and say that they disagree with the entire legislature that's been elected by the state, by the people, and on some of these constitutional amendments where they've then gone back and done a referendum, it seems like they're stepping on another branch of government, because in the Constitution, and we the people for that matter, because they're saying that they know better than us, that they're smarter than us, that there's something that we got wrong. And that's such a high threshold. So going back to that judicial philosophy, this is what I adhere to, and this is what Scalia articulated. First, you start with that you're a textualist. So that's the starting point. So you just look at words. What do they mean? What is the plain meaning of these words that I'm reading here in front of me? Am I having to twist them around, get a thesaurus out, make stuff up, or am I just applying common sense? I was talking to Chief Justice Newton one time. He was talking about how his mother was a school teacher, and he always thought, well, what would my mom think this meant? It's kind of, my mom was a school teacher, my dad was in construction. What do these words mean here? And then from there, if you need guidance, then you step over to the original meaning. That's where I go second. So there's original intent, original meaning. People use them interchangeably, but they are different. I use the original meaning. And so I'll just use the Constitution for an example, and the Second Amendment, for example. So, the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. What does that mean at the time that amendment was ratified in New America? And not only what does it mean, but what does it mean to a regular, they're not a colonist at that point in time, but a new American? What does that mean to them at that point in time? What do those words mean to that individual? Maybe not necessarily the individual drafting it, but what's this the meaning attributed to these words by the common man, common woman walking around in New America? And so that's what I go to.
So continuing along those lines, I think that's actually a great segue into the question, which is, can you provide us with a legal definition of enemies domestic, as is referenced in many of the oaths of office that are taken, especially at the federal level?
Unfortunately, it seems like maybe that's been rather expansive at times lately. And, like I'd mentioned earlier, moms, I have a wife, I had a mother. They're protective over their children, right? So if you are entrusted with somebody's kids during the day while they can't have access to them, and then you're giving them information that the parents find to be either immoral or poisonous to their brain and to their soul, then I have a real hard time saying that person concerned about their child and then going to voice their First Amendment right at a school board meeting is a domestic terrorist or is a domestic enemy. That's incredibly troublesome. And then, there's some other, not just the school board stuff, but there's other folks who get upset because they feel like their rights are being violated. Maybe even they feel like their vote wasn't counted or something like that. So then they go to express themselves, right? When you cross a threshold of violence, maybe there's an issue there. But if people are peacefully protesting, I don't see how they would be a domestic enemy whatsoever. That's pretty normal behavior in a society, in a democratic society like ours, in an open society like ours, where we don't treat our citizens the way they do in these second world countries.
Well, at risk of getting a little bit too deep into it, I'd like to ask just one follow-up, which is, do you believe that domestic or enemies domestic could also apply to those that say that they are trying to fundamentally change our system, our constitutional system, and the basis off of which our system was built?
No, not if they do it the right way. Absolutely not. They could be patriots. If they're trying to do something that was intended by the original document, and they're trying to carry it out. Obviously, again, we're not talking about somebody doing violence, but if they go about it the right way, if they follow the mechanisms in the document, we're fundamentally just talking about disagreements, and we have a system to resolve them. And I don't think those people are domestic enemies at all.
Awesome. Well, moving on into some other areas, I'd like to ask you about your own background. So you were elected in 2016 for district court.
18.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
So since then, what are the most significant lessons that you've learned through those years of experience on the bench?
So I work in an interesting place. Mecklenburg County is the makeup of our district court bench there's 21 judges, and 4 of those are Republicans. I came in the courthouse at a very contentious time. The folks there were very upset about our elections. I think they've come to learn most of them, not all of them, but I think a lot of them have come to learn to like the work ethic of the conservatives, and maybe the ideological diversity that we bring that they just didn't have there. And at first they disliked it because it was different. And some of those folks, quite frankly, have not come around. And so I'm working with other professionals who at times, and I'm calling them professionals because, they're judges, but there's someone there that won't talk to me. I see one of them on the elevator. They won't even acknowledge me or tell me what floor they're going to, or, if I drive by them in the parking garage, they won't wave at me. I mean, it's so I've just had to learn to deal with different types of people. And I think that kind of strengthens your resolve as a conservative. And so I've learned that, the way we do things is probably the right way. And there's a learning curve on the bench. And so anybody who thinks they're not is misguided. You have to, you're sitting up there trying to detect credibility of people. Who's telling you the truth, who's not? What are the cues you're looking for of someone who is not being honest? What about their stories? And so there's a learning curve for that. No, some people may have more natural abilities than others, and I think being in the courtroom does help you with that, because you've represented clients. You can tell when they're being dishonest, or you prosecuted people. You can tell when they're not telling the truth, or when your witness is being dishonest. But there's a learning curve with that. Sure. And then you see things that happen with other colleagues. Maybe they make a mistake and it gets in the news. And so you see that and you're like, wow, I will never do, there's just things that it grabs your attention. And I don't think you can get that experience without having sat there and dealt with it. I'm very grateful for the past 3.5 years of that. Luckily, the Court of Appeals reviews, transcripts out of these district court, or I'm sorry, yeah, I mean, it could be out of the district court. There's no transcripts there. We do have recordings and some direct appeals. So they deal with appeals out of there and out of the Superior Court. And so luckily this stuff won't be abstract to me when I get there, because I've sat in the courtroom on it.
So you can correct the premise of this next question if you feel like it's incorrect, but it is my understanding that one of the most important positions in an appellate judge's staff are his or her law clerks. So how many clerks will you have, and do you currently have as a district court judge, and will you be taking any of these people with you if you get elected?
I have a wonderful, wonderful judicial assistant right now. I do split her with a number of people, and I can't give you the exact number because I don't know, but I suspect it's around 7. So I don't know that I'll be able to take her with me, but she's amazing. But she's a judicial assistant and not a clerk. So we don't have clerks. I actually, last year when Campbell had an internship program, I had a couple in the summer that would come through, and they were phenomenal. But to directly answer your question, it's my understanding we get to hire 3 people in the chambers. So some people hire like an admin to run chambers and then 2 clerks. I've talked to some folks up there, and this sounds like a smarter thing to me. I mean, if you think about it like a business, your work product would be your opinions. And so it's smarter to hire people who can produce more opinions so you can get your job done. And I've been told that you can use that admin position to hire a 3rd clerk. And so you can have 3 clerks and put your opinions out faster, or review them more thoroughly, whatever you need to do. So yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Next question I have is, have you had many appeals of your rulings as a district court judge, and have the majority been sustained or overruled?
I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't really know. I don't have any idea on whether or not they have been appealed, or I try not to look at that. But I suspect there hasn't been a lot of them. There may have been a couple. I think most of them typically come out of civil court if they do. And I haven't had a whole lot of time there. I've been in DV court more than anything. Domestic violence, sorry.
Yes, no, I understand, but thank you for clarifying. Last question is, my assumption is that you're going to be fairly isolated as an appellate judge. So how do you tend on staying in touch with your constituents and the people that you're asking for their vote?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay politically engaged no matter what, because I think that's incumbent upon it. I mean, as judges, it should never come to the courtroom. We should never make politically based decisions. But I think you got to stay connected with the folks that elected you, and the people that you're there to represent, everybody, even people that didn't vote for you. And so, one step is remaining politically engaged, and not just saying, "Oh, I got an 8-year term. I'll see you guys in 7 years." I think that's not cool. And so just continuing to go to the different parts of the state. That's one of the good things about the statewide election, although it's been hard to be away from my family, is that I've gone to places in North Carolina I never would have gone. And I've gotten to meet some really nice people. And then when we go to those big events like the state convention or certain things, I can look around the room and I can recognize somebody in every section. It's so cool. It made the state just shrink from, a 6 hour drive over here to a 5.5 hour drive over here. It's just, you can still go to any town, you get to recognize people. So I will continue to do that. Nothing will change there. And then just in a community basis, I do a lot in the community where I live. And if we ever move, nothing will change about that. I'm in my Legion post here. I usually coach my kids in sports, but that's been difficult lately, just being gone. I know the council folks that run the town here, and we remain engaged in church very heavily. So just I will always make sure I'm out there, always with the people.
Great. Well, we're at 25 minutes. So what I'd like to do is just give you about 5 minutes or so. Any statements that you'd like to make to the voters and to the people that you're seeking their support from?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I've done lots of things. I've done civil law, prosecuted, defended, represented police officers, done military court, and have judicial experience. I'm actually a criminal law specialist, which required a second bar exam, which probably makes me crazy. And it required that I'd done a certain amount of jury trials to verdict. And actually each year we had to update that. It was very interesting. Every time we reapplied, we had to update that. So I've got the requisite experience for that, but also just kind of looking back, like I said, I didn't get politically engaged until right before my district court position. So I think it's important for people to see, what has this guy done as a district court judge? And I maintain that my record's been that of a conservative, with, like I said, with First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, with criminal cases, everything up and down the board that we deal with in district court. And I've often been told that if it's your idea to run for office, it may not be a good one, but if it's somebody else's, it might be a good one. So I just like to note I was recruited by conservative leaders to run the first time around. And then the second time as well for this position, there was folks on the Court of Appeals actually that spoke to me, and they said, "Hey, give this a shot." And I'm glad they do that. Like I said, we have Jenny and I have three kids that we love, and they're fantastic. And hopefully some of the military stuff rubbed off on each of them, because the oldest one now is in civilian air patrol, so he's learning to fly planes, which is amazing to me. I wish I had that opportunity when I was younger. And my other two also are interested in doing that stuff. And it's nothing I push on them. It's just something that they want to do. They're very civic minded. They love the country because that's the way we raised them. That's why we do homeschool, so we can teach them American history, and quite frankly, so we can teach them Bible. And they get that. I've got an incredibly supportive wife who has been nothing but fantastic through the past 16 months. So kind of bringing me to my last point here. I've basically lived with these appeals and Supreme Court candidates the last 16 months. We have been out doing stuff every night, just killing it on the road. I've gone through a new set of tires, 260,000 miles on that red Jeep out there. It's been an expensive endeavor, and there's been a lot of time away from the family. I've had an extra Air Force tour this year because I had to for my career progression. So I've been gone for a couple months for that. And, you don't get to see your family during that. But just working incredibly hard because I want to meet every voter. I want to make sure that I'm putting in the work that needs to be done. And I maintain that work ethic will translate over to the general election and then to the career. So I will not only just run for myself in a primary, but for the other folks on the ballot in the general, and the other branches of government as well, and the other folks running for court. And then once I get there on the bench, I'll continue to work as hard as humanly possible to make sure that I'm upholding the law, the Constitution, that I'm being a conservative judge and applying the appropriate standards to everything. So I mean, that's what I want everybody to know. I will say this: I'm in a primary, right? So I do have an opponent, but just to be completely frank with you, I mean, I told you I lived with these other candidates the past 16 months. I've seen the other fellow like 2-3 times. So I just ask people just to kind of look at some of the differences there. And then finally, because I always forget to say this, I'm the only statewide judicial candidate endorsed by Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, and lucky to get the Judicial Values Coalition North Carolina Values Coalition endorsement as well. Congressman Bishop, Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, the former, and then just folks up and down the court system. So I really appreciate the confidence those folks have put in me.
Well, I appreciate your time. And just real quick before we end, if you could let everyone know how to find out more information about yourself and your campaign.
You're my hero. I always forget to do this. So my website is michaelstading.com. So that's MICHAELSTA, D as in Delta, ING.com. And then my Facebook, if you type in Judge Michael Stading in the search bar, it 100% will come up. I have Instagram and Twitter as well, but there's less information there. Unfortunately, most of it's on Facebook because I'm 41 and kind of an old man.
Well, Judge Stading, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time, and good luck to you in the primaries, and I look forward to seeing you at more of the Republican events.
Thank you, Jesse. I really appreciate you doing this. This is kind of you, man. I'm glad I ran into y'all.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know